you need to be ready to make the changes that are necessary. And that starts with letting go of some things and learning how to delegate to your people. Learning to train them, like actually train them instead of just bringing somebody on and setting them off to do whatever they can and hope they don't mess up and then go check on them 20 times. It's like actually training them to fill the role that you need them to fill. So it's being clear on the role. It's knowing what that role needs to deliver. Like these are all pieces of the puzzle, and the person, the owner, whoever that leader is, needs to be prepared to become a leader and not just a manager of people who just pushes things around and pushes work around. Like you need to actually lead your people by showing them and developing their skill.
Hi everybody, Gavin Coyle. I'm the Gaffer back again with a fantastic guest. It's Coralee, and Coralee is the fractional COO, business strategist for Trove HQ in British Columbia in Canada. Coralee, how are you today? And thank you so much for joining us.
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, brilliant. It's great. I was looking forward to this episode with yourself. Just tell us a little bit about yourself and where Trove HQ hits the mark in terms of helping people in the industry today.
So I have been in the industry for almost 30 years. I think it's 27 or 28 years now. I started... It was kind of, university wasn't really working for me. And it never really occurred to me to actually pursue construction as a career until after 3 or 4, it was actually my 4th year of university. It's like, well, why don't I do construction? Because university was really not what I really wanted to be doing at the time as far as what I was studying. I was like, I can't do this for a career. It was psychology and criminology. And what I realized, it was really emotionally draining. It was hard. And the people that I wanted to help, which was youth in the juvenile detention centers, I couldn't identify with them. And I put these pieces together and just thought, this isn't for me. I'd like to help people, and these are not the people that I need to help. So I quit university. I quit my job. I did it, and I did a complete 180 and started in construction. I'm like, why not do this? So I started in that. And I started as a building envelope technician, and I met my husband, who was a plumber by trade. We started a business. We had that for 15 years. So we were plumbing and full mechanical. Did that for 15 years. We sold that business just over 6 years ago. And sort of in the time after that, I was trying to figure out, what do I want to do next? Because I knew I could do anything, and I didn't know what that was. So it was kind of this couple-year journey of figuring out what I wanted to do next. And what I realized is that, women, when I was in my business, there wasn't a lot of other women, no other women around. And any coaching group that I was in was always me and a bunch of dudes. And although it was valuable and I learned a ton, the reality was there was not many people that looked like me and had the same issues or challenges that I had. There was nobody that could identify with me. And I recognized through my journey of discovering what I wanted to do next is that's what I wanted to create, was that space. And so I started my Thrive HQ as coaching for women in construction. And as it's evolved and seeing where my skill set was and what I really enjoyed doing, I've kind of continued to build this community of women, and also to move more into the fractional COO work, which is me actually getting in and doing the work. Because when I was doing the coaching, what I recognized is that the people I was working with didn't have the time in their day to make the changes that they needed to make on a short term. And so when I could just jump in there and say, why don't I do it? And you continue, and I can work with you, there was a lot better results. So that's why I ended up where I'm at now.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's brilliant, because you weren't, you were humble enough to recognize, look, I can't just be here coaching and mentoring these people and not sort of get in under the weeds and sort of help them out as well. And you pivoted. It sounds like you took a real significant pivot to actually take off one hat and put on the other hat and say, well, look, say as you do as you say. And I can...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, I think, I still do the coaching consulting where they do the work. It is a significant difference in the investment that the people are making for their business. Yeah. And some people just aren't in a position to invest with me as a COO for them. So yeah. It is, I still offer both. So at least if they, the price point where they're at, if they can just afford the consulting and I can help them and I'll do what I can and, help them that way. Or if they're in a position to invest more, then I can actually get in there and do the work for them. And it's, yeah,
You're 5 years in, I think, aren't you, at this stage with Thrive HQ? So
yeah.
anything you need to learn at this stage in terms of your business model, I'm sure you have it down pat, or do you?
Oh, it has been a lot of learning and pivoting and shifting and just exploring what it is that I like to do, how I do it, and how it's best, received by my clients.
Yeah.
So it's always evolving. And the delivery in itself. I mean, ultimately, we're trying to get people to have a business that operates on its own. Like that's the ultimate goal. In the way of getting there doesn't always look the same because it depends on the starting point.
Yeah. So did you have to create your own frameworks to help construction owners? Did you come up with your own blueprints? And like, I know you yourself and your husband had that business, and congratulations, by the way, on selling the business, regardless of the value or whether it was high, low, medium. It's irrelevant to the fact that you successfully brought that across the board. I think resonated with me when we spoke previously. It was like, yeah, like, kudos to you. Regardless of how that comes about, I thought it's a major achievement by anybody to be able to sell, your business when it's not in a situation where it's being taken away from you, maybe because of liquidation or administration or whatever else, that it actually comes to the point where, look, I've brought it where it needs to go and I need to go now, as opposed to hanging on to this baby and then realizing later on, I'm working for the baby's not working for me.
Yes. And that's often what happens with people is just, their job takes over their life. And it really is for a lot of people, just a job that they own. And it's not fun.
I'm really intrigued for you to tell me sort of like key pain points that you're coming across that are trends in your, without giving specific companies or individuals, but like, obviously you wouldn't, but is there a commonality?
Oh, absolutely. And I think the biggest thing is I think a lot of people get into business because they're really good at their trade and they see how things can be done better. Like, that's why people get in. With my husband and myself, where he was the tradesperson, my background was also in construction. However, I had a lot of organizational skills and my experience in construction was with an engineering firm that was multinational. So it was quite corporate. And so there was a lot of experience that I brought. I was there for 10 years. So it was, I learned a lot. And so the combination of us, with my organization and ability to manage and my husband's skill set, and my background in construction, you think that you would have what it would take to build a successful business. And we did for a few years. And then when the business started to scale beyond a point that we really had the skill set to be able to manage, I think it was probably when we got to maybe 10 or 12 employees. It was that for us, it was probably between $1 and $2 million mark in revenue. It was Pure Living Hell for probably 4 or 5 years trying to bridge that gap and just not knowing what we were doing, not knowing how to do it, like just trying to figure it out as we went. And it's very common. Like this, I see this, and this is what I try to help people avoid. Like, get help early, because at the time I didn't even know business coaches and consultants existed. This was like in the early 2000s. So it was not like a business coach on every corner like it is now. So I didn't know they existed. And when I learned about them, we hired one right away. I was like, finally. And one of the things, the first business coach that we invested in, done completely different than what it is now. We actually so I'm in BC, Canada, and I had to go to Seattle, Washington. So I'm in Vancouver. It's about a 3-hour drive south over the border into the US to attend this presentation. So the way they did it back in the day is they did a presentation to a bunch of people and they sold their services at the end, kind of like, timeshares or something where, you go to a hotel and people are like, you need to buy a timeshare. It was that kind of thing. And so it was like an overnight stay that we had to have. We had to leave my kids, or our kids, with my mom. Anyway, so we went down there and they did this presentation. I just sat there and I was like, I had this heaviness in my chest because it was a huge investment for us. It was huge. I had no idea how I was going to come up with the money, where it was going to come from, how we would be able to afford it. And I knew that if I left there without investing, I couldn't still have hope that we would be okay. Like, that was the answer that I needed because somebody else knew how to get me past the point that I already got to. And so we invested, and it was a game changer for us. Like, just like to have somebody to say, okay, let's focus on this one thing, or even to know where to start. Like, there was just so much uncertainty and so much mess. And I just remember when I was like, I kept telling my husband, we need to hire an administrative person, because up to like over $1 million in revenue, we still didn't have an administration person. It was me and him doing everything. Well, we had employees, but it was like, as far as the business went, and he was focused mostly on the people. So I was doing all the business stuff, whether it be marketing or,
Yeah. Finance,
scheduling, customer service, everything. And it was invoicing, and reconciling the books, everything. And so I kept saying, we need to hire help. And he's like, our business is too messy. We can't bring somebody in. I'm like, I know.
That's the reason why you should bring.
Yes, it was like, you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. I don't want to bring somebody into our mess. And at the same time, how do we get out of the mess without bringing somebody in? So it was our first business coach that finally convinced my husband that, yes, you need to bring somebody in. I was like, thank you. So those two pieces were really the foundation for us to really build on and put our business in a place to sell.
Brilliant. Like I will openly share that I use business mentors wouldn't say every 6 or 7 months, but maybe once a year. And I always try to zone in on people with a particular niche and someone that maybe I don't have the problem, but maybe they might see a problem. And I think it's a great tool. I've found it really, number one, it takes you out of the business for a day and you have to focus. So you have to everything else that you thought was more important than that day is no longer important. It's focus of the minds, takes you out of business, puts you into an environment that, no interference whatsoever. And then it's a kind of a reset button to say, well, why are you here and what are you doing? And it's not a come to Jesus meeting by any means, but like, if you only ever get one nugget of information out of those, what is what I've learned. Even if it's just one thing, that's more powerful than anything. That's something that you hadn't got last year, the year before, or from the get-go. And I felt
and imagine getting that piece of information every week, every 2 weeks, or every month, depending on how often you're actually, to have somebody be able to remove those blinders for you and just give you a little bit more sight as to, what's ahead of you.
But I suppose the argument I'm hearing people saying that are listening to the show is like, I don't have time for that. And, I'm flat out on the job. And if I'm not on the job doesn't get done and blah, blah, blah.
It is true. And the way I see it is it's a mindset, because when I work with my clients, this is the biggest thing that gives me satisfaction is that, like, I was speaking with one of my clients yesterday and she was like, she actually went for a nap in the middle of the day because her office is in her garage outside of her house. And she just snuck off in the middle of the day and had a nap because she could. Like, she's realizing that when she learns how to delegate, when she learns how to put things in processes in place, some of her people can take on those responsibilities and you get your time back. Like, that is the biggest thing is getting your time, and you need to prioritize it and you need to make it happen. You need to commit to it. Until you're ready to commit to it, it won't happen.
It's kind of a maturity thing, I think, Coralee, as well, that I found that, we're all full of energy and we're all gung-ho at the start for the first couple of years, and then we start realizing, when you get more mature, kind of, well, what's important that needs to be done and what's not so important. And if you're in the middle of something, what I found as well, if you're in the middle of something and the phone rings, that person's ringing you because in that moment of time they felt that they want to talk to you, but you mightn't be ready to talk to them. So, like, why take the phone call?
Well, that is a really interesting point. I think it depends on your position, how you set your business up, and what your obligations are, because I would say one of the biggest issues that we have in our industry is people who don't respond, that don't answer the phone. And I think and don't get back to you for some extended period of time. I think the customer service is really poor and it suffers. And I think, so if you are in a position where your business is organized and you have, nice block schedule that you follow and you are answering your clients at a particular time when you're going to do it, then I think doing that is fine.
Yeah.
Your time is your time. However, if you're flying by the seat of your pants and emergency to emergency and you're still not answering the phone, I think if everything else is grabbing your attention, you may as well tend to your customers that need your attention at that moment. So I think it depends. It
Brilliant.
depends.
Yeah, that's a brilliant. I totally resonate with that because there's no excuse not to answer the phone unless it's important. So how do you triage what's coming in such a way that it's not going to be, because how many people have got, and I'm sure people will listen to this and going, oh my God, I shouldn't have answered that phone because now I've got 15 minutes listening to absolute nonsense that's not going to make me money, or that's not going to make me progress, and I'm going to lose my traction. Yeah, customer is important, but like, there's very simple softwares out there now for automations that you can automate all this stuff. You don't even have to have a front of office anymore. You can have dial 1 for accounts. Well, then it's an accounts query. It's gone to accounts, dial 2. And this is all very accessible tools. And I think we get stuck into this. Well, my phone is my business and my business is my phone. And it's just nonsense, absolute nonsense. Like, I'm actually glad we're having this conversation, because if you had one thing to take away from the podcast today, is how do you automate the inefficiencies, or how do you remove or triage the important stuff from the less important stuff, from the medium important stuff. And, if you're answering the phone, as you say, and it's reactive, that means your business is reactive.
Exactly. Yes.
So back to the teams then. I'm interested to see, like, the 1 to 2 million. That, and I have in here brackets in hell. I have written.
Yes, it is, and because at that time in my industry, so we were a sub trade, so we're not building houses. So I think the revenue is relative to the service you're providing.
Yeah.
And so when that $1 to $2 million mark is really where you make it or break it, as far as, because you're too small for some things and too big for other things. Like, it's this really difficult space to navigate, especially when you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like, what do you invest in? Who do you hire? At what point do you hire? Like, all of the pieces that go into the puzzle, and you have no idea, and you're just flying by the seat of your pants and making decisions based on the money that's in the account right now. It's a tough place to be in.
So give me the I'll be the guinea pig, okay? So I'm in the 1 to 2 million space, and I just don't seem to be making money. Now I've got 10 employees, and I'm on the job myself, and I'm on the tools. Like, is there any red flags, what I've just said to you, in terms of the conversation that me and you need to have in order for me to start focusing my mind on what's important?
Yeah, the biggest thing that I see, and the biggest red flag when I hear it, because it's not a red flag, like, that's the existence of most people. Like, they're not making any money, they don't know how to change it, they're managing their people, they're micromanaging their people, and they are worried about every piece of their business. Every single piece is on their mind all the time. And so when they are actually on the tools, because that's also a thing that they're doing, they're not productive because they can't focus. So they're being interrupted all over the place. So that is very common. Like, I see it all the time. And the starting point is for yourself to recognize that you need to let go, because it's the fear that holds you controlling everything. And so to acknowledge that you are ready to let other people take responsibility is a starting point. Because notwithstanding the money and the managing the cash flow and the way you bill and the way you charge and how much all of that needs to be tended to, but it comes down to what you are ready to do. And you need to be ready to make the changes that are necessary. And that starts with letting go of some things and learning how to delegate to your people. Learning to train them, like actually train them, instead of just bringing somebody on and setting them off to do whatever they can and hope they don't mess up and then go check on them 20 times. It's like actually training them to fill the role that you need them to fill. So it's being clear on the role. It's knowing what that role needs to deliver. Like, these are all pieces of the puzzle, and the person, the owner, whoever that leader is, needs to be prepared to become a leader and not just a manager of people who just pushes things around and pushes work around. Like, you need to actually lead your people by showing them and developing their skills.
Yeah, brilliant. I'm glad you said that. It totally resonates with me as well. The risk management is, I suppose, is the big theme in in our podcast, is how people manage risk within their business and the challenges in everyday construction. And I think, to your point, one of the risks is actually the people themselves. They don't recognize that they're a risk to the business, and
They are
I th-
the most often the biggest, like if you just took that person out, like just took them out, the business would likely fall if they haven't put the things in place. What you want to do is be able to take them out and have the business still stand and operate. And that's possible. And again, it comes back to that person being ready to take on that role of leader, stepping out and letting their people do what
yeah,
they can.
design it as if you were sick.
Yes.
You
As if
don't want
all
to
of your people were sick on any given day. Like you need to be able to, your business
contingencies,
needs to
crisis
rely on
management.
your,
Yeah,
yeah, like rely on your processes, not your people.
yeah, yeah, and don't choke it up either. Don't like it. People think when you talk about processes and you talk about systems, oh my god, this person, the Coralee, is going to come at me with a manual now, and I have to go with this manual that there's every page is well written and it has this little plastic sleeve and there's little arrows here and arrows there and you must do this and you must do that. It's not that at all. It
It
really,
doesn't have to be. It can be. I certainly do not create manuals and I don't have that thing. Like that's not what I aim for because ultimately it needs to be working for the people that are running the processes. So that, it's not a one size fits all. Every business is different and everybody has a different, it comes down to what it is that you're trying to achieve and how do you want to do that? How do you set yourself free in order to do that? And it does, I mean, absolutely documenting processes is a huge thing that I think everybody needs to do because you need to have somewhere that other people, your people can go that's not you. So if a problem happens, it's like they have a resource that they can go to, or they have something that they can learn, or if they want to figure something out, there's a place that they can go and it's not all stored in your head. Like take it out of your head and put it somewhere else so it's not always on you.
yeah. And this is great because I'm listening and I'm hearing people saying, "Oh yeah, that's easy for you." I have to run a business, but like, there's nothing to stop you taking on a student or a graduate out of college and saying to the graduate, "I want you to follow me every day, and I want you to start taking notes on how I approach our contractors, how I approach our clients, and start taking notes as regards, nuances that you see that I'm saying the same thing to the same people. So then I know that why am I regurgitating this over and over? All right, it's different people, but like it should be the same process. It should be the same language. And now then you start creating the sort of a culture because the culture is you because you're the culture. But how do you get that in such a way that if it's in a process now, the culture becomes more sustainable for the future, that you can actually have this utopia of, well, I'm taking holidays for 2 weeks. I don't care. I'm gone. Like
Mm-hmm.
the business will survive without me.
Mm-hmm.
I think people have a bias or have a sort of, they put the barriers up. I can't do that. Like that's not going to that's going to cost me money, and I don't want to start creating this paperwork and then becomes an administration thing, and then I have to manage that paperwork. That's it. Like it doesn't have to be a Bible. It can be, as you say, and I've seen like in our other business we have ISO standards and it's Bible. Like, and in fairness to ISO, they've made efforts to shrink that to make it more reasonable. But it works. It works because everything that is in that system is exactly how we do business. And it works for us, but it might not work for everybody.
Yeah, and I think it also what can feel really overwhelming is that where do you even start to build this book? And the reality is it doesn't have to be all or nothing. Like it's not like all of a sudden you bring in a big book and now this is how we operate. It's really just documenting how things are done most efficiently, when things are done well. How did it go? And then document it as you go. Like that's I when I get my clients to document their processes, it's just documented as you're doing the work. So for example, even if like administrative, for example, is a great opportunity, anything that you do on the computer, like Loom, just, or some other screen recording type of thing, as you're doing it, because I have to invoice anyway. So just record it and talk what it is that you're going through. So it doesn't have to be all of this extra work. It's just a matter of, hitting record and recording what you're doing at the time. And it could be a simple voice memo that you send to somebody that they can document. I'm troubleshooting a furnace or a boiler or whatever it is. And this is how I do it. And just talk about it on a voice memo and then send it to somebody else to document. Like, it doesn't have to be you sitting and figuring out, okay, what's the first thing? Where do I start? Like, it doesn't have to be that way. It's just start somewhere.
No, that's a great tool, actually. I never thought about that, just to create a sort of a library of memos, voice memos that you can turn in. And as you said, exactly, like if you look at the risk profile of your business and you say to yourself, well, what's the biggest things that's stopping me from progressing today? And it could be something as simple as, I don't know, it could be, I have to have a certain meeting every morning with the guys just to get them ready for the job. Well, why do you have to have that meeting if they already know what they should be doing anyway? So is there any way of automating that? So I think what you were saying there was, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if you do it in bite sizes and not try and take it all as one chunk and sort of, just do bits and pieces, and it could take you 2 years, it could take you 3 years to get to that. That's what it is. This is me.
It's a work in progress. It's a journey. It's not like you don't have to have it all done today. And I think because we all feel like we're so far from where we want to be as far as the organization of our business, we just don't even start because it feels like it's too big. I just encourage people to start something, because at least it's that first step. And then at some point you'll get some momentum as you're it's with my client yesterday where she could go have a nap because, she was finally stepping further back out of her business. Just you'll find that as you get these things started, you'll just have more time. And then you'll be like, okay, now I could do a little bit more.
I see a lot of the athletes and triathlons and mountain climbers, and they say the same thing. Just don't think about the height of the mountain, just think about one step in front of the other.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden you're there. And I know it sounds like, oh yeah, whatever, but it's very true, isn't it? Like,
Oh, absolutely.
I think there's a problem with entrepreneurship. I think personally that we're very reactive people by nature, and that's a problem.
Well, I think it depends, but yes, I mean, they're definitely, and until you get to the point, one of the things that I remember, and I was just thinking about, some of the advice that I've gotten in my career from professionals or experts and stuff, and a lot of my lessons have been learned the hard way. I haven't been given a lot of advice necessarily. However, one of the things I remember in my very early career was when I was working for the engineering firm. My boss said to me, "Perception is reality." And I was like, what the hell does that, what does that even mean? Like, I was young and I was just like, what does that even mean? And I just, I started reflecting and thinking about it. And that one thing, which I was like in my early 20s, that was probably one of the biggest impacts on me as a leader, as a communicator, as somebody who doesn't take things personally, somebody who is very solutions oriented, because that was like a light bulb moment for me where I recognized that regardless of what I do, what matters is how it's perceived. So if somebody is perceiving my actions in one way or another, I need to understand from their perspective, how they're seeing this interaction if I want to have a positive outcome that works for me. And when I started just operating in a different mindset, understanding how other people are thinking, and maybe that also is partly, my psychology background where I'm just interested in how people think. And the way they behave and all of those things. So that was a really important thing for me because it just helped me be stronger in many areas of communication and understanding of people and the way that I approach problems and everything. That to me was was a big thing and really impacted everything I did after that. Like just becoming the leader, the person I needed to be able to manage the people and understand people and also see where I fit into everything. And I'm not the right person to be doing all of the things. Like that's just the reality.
Yeah, no, stick to your lane, stick to and know your worth. And I can, as you're talking, I can start to see where the COO comes into it, because I'm listening to you going, I if I'm meeting you and you're putting together the blueprints for me as a coach and mentor, and then I know that you have the COO model as well, I'm thinking to myself, no, I'll just get Coralee to do it.
Yeah, and you know what the thing is, the reality is a lot of the people that I work with in that capacity, it's just like that's exactly it. It's just like that's not how my brain works. I know I need it. It's not how my brain works. Can you just take care of it? I'm like, yes, I can.
So okay, so go back to Gavin then. So I'm at the 1 minute, 1 to 2 million hell, pain point, and I say, right, I'm going to take Coralee on here. Is that like a full-time, part-time? How do you calculate your time to go in and problem solve and get this up and running? And what's the KPIs? I suppose that's where I'm going with it.
Yeah, so if I'm acting in the position of a COO, typically the revenue point is like 5 million plus. So it's a little bit. They have a team established. They have people in their places, and they are still doing most of the work. Like it's most of the brain work. So it's a little bit different than the consulting, which is kind of that $1 to $2 million mark. Is more so they can invest in the consulting where I help them and they do the work themselves. So when I'm doing my COO stuff, it's based on deliverables. So what is their focus? What do we need to get in place? What's the starting point? Because some of the people, they just need positions hired. So I will hire people for them. I always start with, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Cameron Harold. He's kind of like the COO whisperer. He's kind of a guru in the COO world, and he has a book that's called Vivid Vision.
Okay, Vivid Vision.
I always start with my COO clients going through the Vivid Vision exercise. So I help them build this Vivid Vision. And it's more than just a vision. It's like a 4 to 5 page document where we really dig into the details of what they want their business to look like in 3 years. My job is to make that. And that's why I say I bring the vision to reality, because I take their vivid vision that they've created and I make that happen. And it's like the way you craft it is like every sentence is like a goal, almost like the way it gets written and kind of
that's very cool.
Yeah, it is, because it becomes very tangible. It's like you want X amount of people, or you want your business, your office to look like this, or you want your finances to look like this. You're looking at all the different areas of your life and your business and how you want those things to look. And so it's easier for me because I say easier, not easy, but it's easier for me because I know what it is that you want to build. And so I can take those pieces of the puzzle and I can figure out what it is that needs to happen to make that piece happen. And where do we start? Because you may want an office of, maybe you want to have a team of 30 people. And right now you have a team of 8. Well, how are we going to get to 30? What does that look like? And then we work backwards and
re-engineer it.
Exactly.
I love that because, and that's a brilliant takeaway, because you see a lot of these KPIs are very, how would you say, fancy language being used in it, and it doesn't really have substance. Whereas, and for you as well, I suspect it covers your model, because, well, you told me in and the sentence read, we want to build a company to 15 million by January 2026 or whatever that is, and we're going to do it because I'm going to bring on more people. Well, you never brought more people on, so that sentence belongs to you because those words came out of your mouth.
Yeah, and it makes it it almost in itself creates the strategy, I'll say strategy, because you know what you wanted to get to. You have that overarching view of what you want your company to look like. And then we create what has to happen at each level. Like what's happening at year two, what happens at the end of year one, what's happening in each quarter to get to that point. And when you break it down that way, it becomes very manageable. It's like bite-sized pieces. This is what we need to be doing today. One of the first things we often have to do is just maximize the capacity of the people that you currently have, because it's not necessarily bringing on more people you don't want to bring on more people to get more revenue. You want to maximize the people that you have efficiently. I don't say to overwork them. It's not overworking them. It's putting those processes in place that they can operate efficiently so that you can maximize their capacity, and then you can see what more people looks like and what you have to do to bring on more people. It's not just a matter of hire more people and bring more revenue. That doesn't work. You end up like with a bigger mess. It's like you multiply your mess.
Yeah. I think that's so powerful. I'm so glad you shared that with us as well, because um, as somebody that I heard recently who I would hold in good esteem said, if it's not written down, the chances are it'll never get done. And a lot of us have a grand vision in our heads, or we think, visualization is the way to go. And it is. Visualization is good.
It's part of it.
Yeah. But it doesn't, if it's not written down, it doesn't become as tangible. It doesn't become as actionable.
Yeah, and the goal with the vivid vision is you share it with everybody, like so everybody knows what it is that you're building. And it's not just your team that you're working with; it's your vendors, it's your bankers, like everybody, your clients. People know what it is that you're building. Not only does that help hold you accountable to actually doing it, they also see what it is that you're working towards, and they can see their part in it, or they can see where they contribute to that. So it is a very powerful document that is really the starting point I see when I work with somebody in the COO capacity. It's just really getting clear on what it is that you want to build.
Okay, so talk to me about the failure points then. At what point does Coralee say, do you know what, I think it might be better if your business and my business kind of don't go in the same direction, because there's too many agendas that are not a meeting of minds? Because we all know the construction industry has a problem with collaboration, and has a problem with interconnection, and has a problem with bias and people's self-interest and agendas, and that can happen within a company environment if it's allowed to flourish. So I'm sure there's situations where you went in and someone said, here's your one. I told them not to bring her in. I told them not to bring her in. Yeah, it goes. I think it goes back to that entrepreneurial trait as well of being reactive and going, "Oh yeah, I want some of that because that's exactly what I want." And then there's no thought process, because they may have been rewarded before where they've jumped into things and things got better and they've had successes, and now they kind of have this blueprint that, well, it works because I can move at a fast rate and get things done. Whereas if you step back and you say to yourself, "Hold on a minute." Coralee is going to come with a lot of stuff behind her, and you better be ready for this because this is going to be. So I suppose what I'm trying to say to you is, I'm sure you have that. And like, I've no doubt you have that sort of conversation with them to focus the mind and say, you better be ready for this because this is going to be game changer stuff.
Yes, like they definitely have those conversations where they will have to do things differently. They need to be ready to do things differently. They need to block an hour of their time a week to, depend on which client and which capacity, an hour a week that they meet with me. If they're like, and if they're not committed to that time, or if they say, "Oh, something else come up, I have to cancel this week," I'm not cool with that. That's not okay because you're not prioritizing this and you're not going to get the results.
Or
You
they're
need
not
to be ready.
prioritizing you either.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Yeah, no,
Yes.
no.
Yeah, ultimately it's about them and their business. And if they're serious about changing their business, then they have to be serious about investing in their time and obviously, with the people that are there to help them.
Yeah, like one of the main reasons I wanted to get you on the show was, look, you've been in the engineering industry. You've had your own business, sold it. You've got the psychology background, the academic background, if you like, and you're not just coming at it from coaching. See, a lot of coaches out there are just people jumping on the bandwagon with like,
Yes.
I'm a coach, I'm a certified coach, so I have all the answers. I definitely get a sense, and I'm sure the listeners and anyone watching this on YouTube will definitely get a sense as well that you know what you're talking about. Like, and I think it's a credit to you that you've pivoted to producing this business model, and the fact that you've turned around and said, "Yeah, I can be COO at a certain level to walk the walk with you," and so it's not just this talk shop or workshop type environment or sort of this little sort of generic coaching model. And I'm not having a dig at the coaching industry. I'm just saying that we need people that have intrinsic skin in the game, that actually, have seen all the pitfalls and seen all the risks and sort of maybe come out with it just about, even with scrapes on their backs, to kind of go, yeah, like you can talk their language. And I think it's a credit for you. In terms of throwing a few curve balls at you, Coralee, if you don't mind, because I know time, we need to move on. But you mentioned the Vivid Vision book, but is there a book you would recommend? It doesn't have to be a business book. It can be any type of book that you resonated with you, and it's your go-to book, if you like.
I have a huge bookshelf. I love to read, and a lot of it is business related, mindset, personal development, like just understanding things differently. And really, the book that stood out to me most recently, and it is a business book, so it's "Buy Back Your Time" by Dan Martell. It just helped me to see things differently. It's that whole idea of you know you hire people to get more time. You don't hire people to increase your capacity or to increase your workload. It's like you hire the people to buy back so that you have more time. And when you approach it that way, it allows you to grow. But when you're hiring people to grow your revenue, then it doesn't allow you to actually grow because you're still doing all of the things, like you're still doing your part. So when you are hiring people with the mindset that this person is going to be taking more off my plate, then it's a different way of approaching it. That book is it was different. I mean, there's so many books out there with same ideas just written differently. That one to me presented new ideas and same ones in a different way that was, really resonated with me. That's
Yeah,
kind of
we
one.
might put that in the show notes actually, because I actually going to go and find that book myself.
Yeah, it's a really good one.
Yeah,
It is really good. I think it's in the top 20 worldwide right now for business books.
we'll get it on Audible, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yes, you can. I have it on Audible and I have the hard copy because I like to listen and then be able to refer back. So the good books I have on hard copy and on Audible. Because if I actually sit down to read a book, I'll fall asleep. I think it took the last book I actually read, Vivid Vision, I did read cover to cover in a weekend. Um, but the last book I read, it was the 5 a.m. Club, and it literally took me a year to read that book. It's like, I don't know, inch and a half thick or something, because I would fall asleep and I'd wake up, and it's a story, so it's not even that hard, but it was just, I would sit down to read it and I'd read the paragraph and I'd fall asleep and I'd have to wake up and read it again. It was very difficult to get through for me. So yes, now I'm just like, okay, forget the hard copies. I am just going Audible, and I will buy the hard copy when it's a really
yeah.
good book that I want to flip through.
When my eyesight started failing, I switched to Audible, and it was like game changer. I was like, oh my god! And this is
Yeah.
we're not sponsored by Audible, but what I found was the more technical the book, the harder to listen,
Yeah.
because
Yes.
I feel like you have to be taking notes as you're listening. I don't know.
Yeah. But for
Um,
me, it's because I usually just listen when I'm driving. So I replay, like I'll just go back, and think, and then I'll stop it and I'll think on the point when something really hits me like that. And I think on it, but then I kind of see the first run through a book as the first run through to get the ideas. And then once, like, there's a couple that I'm going to go back through, like Buy Back Your Time. I haven't gone through a second time yet, but I will definitely be going through that one a second time. There's just some that are, you go through again just to pick up more information. Because I think they say it's something like 11, if you read a book 11 times, that's the point at which you can consider it mastered, that you picked up all the ideas in it, because there's just so much that is in a good.
yeah, that you have to absorb. Something of interest about you that not many people would know.
I used to race downhill mountain bikes before I had kids.
Wow,
That was my husband and I raced bikes together for a few years before we had kids.
brilliant.
And
Mountain bikes.
yeah, so, down the rocks and routes and trails of the mountains. And I didn't do, like, I've only rode again a few times since having kids, because the risk is so high. It's just, and my oldest is 18, so I haven't been doing a lot of riding, except when my son graduated in Italy in 2022, and I went to Italy to see him graduate. He was with this academy that's based in the US, and they travel the world and ride mountain bikes. And so when he was graduating in Italy, I went there and I went on a ride with the group. I survived. It was like, they're like, oh, anybody can do this. Hell no. It was not anybody can do this. I'm glad that I had the experience on a bike that I had. And I had so much fun. Like, the last time I rode with my son, I was still faster than him. So, a world later, what to me was a moment I will remember forever, just riding with him and his classmates in Italy.
Yeah,
It was
that's very
amazing.
cool.
But
That's
yeah,
very cool.
it was.
Favorite holiday destination?
Well, I have to say probably Mexico, really. I would. There's places I haven't been yet that I'd like to go, and would probably move up the list. But for what I've been to, it'd be Mexico, and probably I want to get to Greece one day, and I want to get to Bora Bora one day. I love the water, and a
Yeah,
nice beach is a good place for me to be. So
it's brilliant. Coralee, you've been absolutely fantastic, and I'm really, delighted to have you on the show. There's some brilliant, absolutely great tools and tips that we've taken, that I've personally taken anyway, from
I'm going to
this
actually, there's two
episode.
things that I want to leave with your audience it's one thing, but the whole processes thing, which can feel really overwhelming. There's two platforms that I recommend, and I have no affiliation for them. I've heard good things about both of them, and I recommend Trainual, Trainual, and Sweet Process, SWEET process. Those two are a resource that you can use to help build your processes, and it has AI capabilities for storage, for helping you build them. So anybody who is feeling like that is a way overwhelming task, I would recommend checking out either one of those, and letting that help you to build those
those
Some of your
processes
programs.
into your business. And you know, I'm sure it doesn't matter where somebody is geographically. You can work with anybody on a global scale.
Yeah.
How do we get in contact you? How does people reach out to you? What's, you know, the website, email, LinkedIn?
Yes, all of those. My website is thrivehq.ca. So it's THRIVEHQ.ca. That's my website. I am on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram, Coralee Beatty. I'm one of one. I'm pretty easy to find. And yeah,
That's where we can
I'm
get you.
here. Yeah.
Brilliant. We'll put it in the show notes. And Coralee, thank you so much for coming on. You were an amazing guest, and I think it's a credit to you. And I can really see the benefit of working with you, because I definitely got some great tools out of it. So thanks very much for your time.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.